Ladies and gentlemen, I want us to have a very candid discussion. And am I the only one that is wondering how the charges against Mackenzie massacre, the cultic teachings in Shakahola, how the whole story turned from Mackenzie to Ezekiel Odero? Today, the High Court has ordered the police to reopen the church after it was closed, and also the application for him to be detained for 30 days, for Ezekiel to be detained for 30 days, was also squashed by the court. But let's look at it, because I have been following the political fallout about the issue. When the Kilifi story broke out, it was moments before I traveled home, some few days before I traveled home. It was about Mackenzie asking followers to fast to death so that they can go to heaven. Now, I think up to now, approximately 130 bodies were retrieved from the graveyards there, and the postmortem conducted, showing that some children were strangled while others were smothered to death. This was a claim, and this was a charge against Mackenzie, who was really blamed. And we highly raised questions on how did this miss the intelligence dragnets? To what extent could this thrive in a country that has intelligence? Why were they aloof? And today I posed that question to a former intelligence guy, a very good subscriber in this channel, and he told me, Kevin, I want to tell you the truth in your eyes, that there is no corner of this country that intelligence, that does not have, where intelligence does not work. He told me, unlike the security forces, and that is why if you look at the national budget, their budget is normally very huge, by the way. It's a body that is less visible, but they have very huge budget. He told me that because saying that any corner in this country, from Garissa to Malaba to Kilifi to everywhere, the intelligence is aware. And according to him, he was telling me that intelligence were aware. I totally agree. Nothing like they missed it. Now, reacting to this matter, President Ruto said this, and I think he named him Mackenzie. Terrible terrorist. I think if we can get that soundbite from my team.
To the teachings and to the beliefs of religion, whether they are Christians, Muslim, or indeed any other religion. What we are seeing in Kilifi, in Shakahola, is akin, no difference between Mr. Mackenzie, who pretends and postures as a pastor, when in fact he is a terrible criminal. Terrorists use religion to advance their heinous acts. People like Mr. Mackenzie are using religion to do exactly the same thing.
So that was President Ruto joining the public in lynching Mackenzie, and by that time it was just about Mackenzie. The next day, we saw another turn of events when Ezekiel Odero was summoned by DCI in Kilifi. The next day, he was arrested and detained in Mombasa, he and his church being linked with that of Mackenzie. And detectives, the little evidence they had was that at one time he bought a TV station, I don't know, some frequency station from Mackenzie at 500,000 shillings. And that was the only transaction, the link between the two. But of course, it turned as a crackdown it was a crackdown against maybe those churches, or trying to delink with a lot of misinformation coming that probably some of the bodies that were retrieved in Shakahola had at one point been at Mackenzie's, at Ezekiel Odero's church. Then the church was shut. Those who were there, congregants, were arrested and actually questioned, called to write statements. Ridiculous claims that those of the fact that there is a morgue close to the church were some of the things that police dangled with, claiming that, of course, the two were interconnected. But then, at that point, I didn't buy it, because if it belongs to someone else, there is totally no problem. It can belong to someone else. I don't think that's a big problem. Currently he's fighting for his release. But while at home, I bumped on a clip by Dorcas Rigathi, contrary to what William Ruto was saying, because I think the country was kind of not condemning, but was really condemning Ezekiel Mackenzie for that. And this issue was a purely a Mackenzie affair. I don't know how it turned to be again Ezekiel, and the whole discussion now is trending against about it now Ezekiel, which is trending. And I think Dorcas Rigathi came out to say to create a position that it should be about Mackenzie as a person, but not the whole body of Christ.
Na kama kuna mharifu, sisi tunasema kama Paul Mackenzie ako na shida na amepatikana, huyo ni Paul Mackenzie. Hata mama yake asiingizwe kwa hiyo, hata baba yake na familia yake haiko hapo, na kanisa la Bwana liachiliwe. Kwa sababu huwezi kuchukua mtu mmoja, na kwa sababu ulikuwa na mambo yako unaingiza maneno, unaanza kusema sijui makanisa ilifanya. Paul Mackenzie sio kanisa. Yeye hata anasema si pastor, yeye ni master. So we treat him as he is. A criminal is a criminal. A terrorist is a terrorist. Na tujue katika haya maneno, na ndio nasema lazima tuyaongee. Kwa sababu tusipoongea, watu watachukulia ati sisi tunasema sisi wa Kristo ni waharifu. Kuna wa Kristo bilioni mingi katika hii dunia. Na hawa wa Kristo huwezi kuwajumulisha na kusema hawa wote ni criminals. Kwa hivyo tuende katika mahali vile katiba imetuwekea. We have a law where when somebody is a criminal, the procedure how it's supposed to be done. But we cannot stand there and say because one Christian has been called.
Now it is very clear that Dorcas was reacting to that matter, because early to it, she attended the event for Ezekiel in Nairobi here. There's a crusade, and I think that photo was really trending. There was a crusade that was held here in Nairobi by Ezekiel, and she attended. And actually, she's a spiritual man, I think. Somehow, spiritually, they had worked together or something like that. So Ezekiel was not the point of focus. But looking at how it was done, the man with the white ribbon was, according to me, sent to jail there to spur emotions so that to let the public come back to defend the church. Why am I saying? After that, you will see the followers milling around Shanzu Lokot, that was yesterday, and milling around the church and calling for his release, while we know very well he looks innocent to me. I know it's not my role to declare that he's innocent or guilty, but he was not the point of focus. Whether Ezekiel Odero is released or not, I don't think it should have an impact. It should make us even start arguing about that of Mackenzie. because that of Mackenzie is what was at the point. So it looks like some protectionism. There was some inside plot to protect. Now, something I understand, and this is something that I think I read, and if you do your research, you will find out. Ezekiel Odero was due to hold a crusade in Dodoma. I understand he's actually establishing one of the biggest churches near that city. And some of the battles he's fighting is including that one because of the clash in religions or something. So some other quarters also say that it was linked to his religious exploits in Tanzania. That's a claim that has also come, not yet substantiated or rather confirmed by himself. But those around him that are privy to some of the developments are saying that he's just fighting some of these battles. We have seen different church leaders trooping to the court to defend Ezekiel. And true to that, I entirely believe the point was about Mackenzie. As to that linkage, even if it's released, is that going to put that story to closure? Do you know that Mackenzie had even been released at one point and then rearrested? No evidence of something. The wife was also arrested from the home. I don't know whether she's also being detained or whether she was released. But 6 other people that were arrested with Mackenzie, who allegedly were his aides, were also released. Back to my intelligence guy. He told me, Kevin, it is not the first time that the Mackenzie guy is getting arrested. The guy was arrested. And there are stories, if you check online, you find stories about a clash between him and Aisha Jumwa. At one point about he was arrested and released. We're accused of the same accusations have been going on. So this is not something that is new to the intelligence. This is something that the who's and who's know in this country. And it should not be treated, and the public should not allow themselves to be swayed to be treated as something that is out of the moon. Clearly, there was a ploy and a well laid down strategy that was played to protect some of the few people that were involved in this issue. That's it. There was a bit of protectionism. That protectionism has been treated as protecting the church because, truth be said, the same weekend I was at home, and of course I was also hosting some crusade in our home, and I remember going to the chief to ask for permission, the assistant chief of the area. I was taken through circles, and the provincial, the assistant chief, and those guys, they were looking for some personal fortunes. I had to part with some personal fortunes and really make some very, commitments, make some personal commitments on how the event will unfold, simply because of what was happening at the other end. Saying that, these issues of prayers normally have problems, and we want to know what you guys are going to be preaching. There, you're going to be another sort of Mackenzie. So that's it. But that notwithstanding, the services in the churches were going on. I don't think there is any single church that was closed because of it. However, there was attack against the church. So clearly, the public was baying for Mackenzie's blood, but the state decided it's about protectionism for reasons. Let's look at it this way. The state is trying to evade calls for regulation of the church not because it's a bad thing, but because it's against the campaign by the Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza campaigned on a platform, and they successfully ran and spinned and twisted Idol Dinga's calls for regulation of the third generation churches. I am not a prophet of doom, and I'm not saying this because I want it to happen. But if we will continue giving a blind eye to regulation of churches, then clearly what happened in Kilifi is going to be the first, and it's not going to be the last. Because religion is an opium of the people. The people are weak. The political kingdom, the political class has failed, and Kenyans are vulnerable, picking anything and everything, a thread of hope they can cling on. I followed this story here. A confession that in the church of Ezekiel, some people took, they claim that some people died there, and the defense lawyers were saying that there were sick people that were taken there and they died there. You know why? Some of these people have been taken to the hospitals, some of the big hospitals that you know in this country, the who's and who's, they have been treated by some of the best doctors. But without that, there's still hope. So that clinging of hope that is remaining, like for this, there are some areas that some people that cannot even access medical care. That's the point. There's some people that cannot even get hospitals. So the only thing they can get is get to that church. Number two, while there was a bit of that protectionism, the whole thing was turned as a battle against the church, or as an attack against the church. In fact, I can tell you that those who are the national altar, those who are sitting in the national altar, really believe that that was an attack against the church. Not many, not all. I may be wrong on this, but not also that the issue of the cult. You may not be shocked to realize that the national spiritual altar was in conformity with the messaging, some of which we saw as a cult. But is it not true that the national altar has employed intercessors to intercede for the country and fast every Wednesday? So can you be shocked? Will you be shocked? Do you think they may not buy the concept of fasting? You never know. Lastly, you cannot underestimate probability of connection of deep political powers. And that is why the talk about where was intelligence cannot be entertained. Intelligence was there, but the deep political powers knew what was in the fold. That's my point, guys.